Article about bottom up effort will key iron will key to curb plastics. A study published in Lancet Planetary Health has warned of plastic pollution's effects doubling by 2040. So, India, the world's most populated country, has been estimated to contribute about 20% of global plastic emissions. So, this can increase the country's health burden, worsen aquatic contamination, contribute to climate change, and damage terrestrial ecosystems. So, while India annually generates about 93 lakh tons of plastic waste, the biggest culprits in the emission trail have been primary plastic producers, unmanaged waste, poor collection, segregation, and disposal, open burning, and widespread lack of awareness. So, of the bulk plastic waste, about 58 lakh tons are burnt and the rest re enters the environment as waste, causing extensive land and water pollution. It is estimated that half of this consists of single use plastics, packaging, water bottles, and sachets, while only about 12% is recycled and 70% dumped in landfills or is strewn around. About 80% of marine pollution is caused by plastic, which releases toxic chemicals like bisphenol A and antimony. It breaks down into microplastics, entering the food chain, soil, and water, reducing soil fertility, inhibiting plant growth, and affecting the crucial process of photosynthesis. So, plastic severely impairs human health throughout its cycle, causing diseases, development issues, and chronic conditions due to toxic exposure. Accumulation of chemicals like bisphenol A, phthalates, and fluoroalkyl substances in the polyfluoroalkyl substances in the human body through ingestion or inhalation is linked to cancers, infertility, diabetes, immune suppression, and cardiovascular diseases. So, India's disease burden linked to plastic associated chemicals in 2025 alone was estimated at a staggering 25,000 crore rupees in terms of healthcare expenses, productivity loss, and premature deaths. So, all of this calls for urgent attention from the central administration in mitigating the threat and minimizing its impact on the country's environment and public health. So, in this editorial in the New Indian Express, we see that India's plastic waste management rules 2016 was amended seven times to tighten the regulations curbing plastic pollutions. The Indian Plastics Pact of 2021, which is anchored by the Confederation of Indian Industry, aimed at creating a circular economy for plastics, eliminating unnecessary use, promoting reusability and recyclability, and strengthening waste management. But widespread lack of public awareness has blunted the efforts. India needs a bottom up effort to ensure that the country's future is not compromised by this growing scourge. So, this was one article about that, and there's also something about AI, how AI, a case against AI, quick take. So, it is not just lazy students who are taking ill advised shortcuts that artificial intelligence tools offer. So, this week, a district court judge in the US state of Kansas sanctioned and fined 5 attorneys for citing fabricated cases, quoting non existent jurisprudence and misstating laws using AI for a filing for an extra helping of irony. The lawyers were reappealing. The lawyers were appealing against an alleged patent infringement. So, lead drafter Sandeep Seth offers the excuse of a family medical emergency for using ChatGPT, filing documents without reasonable investigation into their legal validity is considered a professional misconduct in India too. So while the Supreme Court has been rightly leading the effort to bring Indian judiciary into the digital age like universities. It might want to institute clear procedures to screen for inadmissible AI generated conduct. So that was about this. Let's see a little more about ensuring menstrual rights as Tamirachi Tangapandian, who is an MP from South Chennai and member of the Standing Committee on Education, Women, Children, Youth and Sports, says. So it is a touchy topic, but very much needed, I guess. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep, as Robert Frost says. So, when the Supreme Court declared menstrual health a fundamental right and directed free sanitary provisions in schools, it did something more than just correcting a long injustice. It issued as a moral summons. Far too long, menstruation has been treated as a private embarrassment, a matter of cleanliness or charity rather than a constitutional question of dignity, bodily autonomy, and equal opportunity under Article 21 of the Constitution. So, that legal recognition is historic. Now, the real test shall truly begin, turning a judgment into changed lives. Across India, menstruation touches the lives of hundreds of millions. So, she says, as she set out in her private members' bill to amend the national menstrual hygiene policy, a submission that was grounded in public health evidence and lived experience. India is home to over 393 million menstruators, and the policy framework must respond to that scale with the rights. The bill insisted on what the court's ruling implies. Menstrual health is structural, systemic, and intersectional. So, what does it mean in practice? Firstly, the supply is inadequate. Free sanitary pads in schools are essential and welcome, but access must be expanded to reusable low waste options and to supply chains that make them affordable and dignified. So, the bill called explicitly for support to enterprises producing sustainable menstrual products and for incentives to scale up these markets so that choices are available to all communities, urban and rural alike. Secondly, menstrual health cannot be siloed in sanitation. It belongs to health systems, in education, in labor policy, and in disaster planning. The bill promotes cross ministerial collaboration between labor, health, and education so that the implementation is planned, monitored, and accountable across departments. It also aims to mandate that reproductive and menstrual health care becomes be comprehensive, including diagnosis and treatment of disorders often ignored. So, this includes awareness about polycystic ovary syndrome, endometriosis, and other conditions that leave millions untreated and in pain. Third, we must make education humane and early. Too many girls learn about menstruation at Minak startled and shamed, boys are largely left out of this education. So the bill proposed menstrual education from ages 7 to 8 and communication strategies that normalize menstruation while challenging stigma because information shapes dignity and behavior long before policies arrive in adulthood. Fourthly, inclusivity must be explicit. Menstruators are not a single demographic group. Sanitation workers, persons with disabilities, transgenders, and non binary people, menopausal workers, each has distinct needs. So the bill asks that monitoring and evaluation include lived experience, data disaggregated by disability, gender identity, caste, and age, and that disability and translate organizations be funded as partners. So, this prevents programs that help some while excluding others. Finally, we must stop pretending that messaging is merely promotional. The bill recommended removing formal and informal censorship of menstrual health content and strengthening culturally sensitive media campaigns that dismantle shame rather than sell products. So, in crises such as heat waves, water shortages, and floods, menstrual needs must be a part of emergency planning. So, this is said not as an ideologue but as a legislature from a legislator who has watched how piecemeal interventions fracture into tokenism. So, in her writing on care, she warned against sentimental solutions that offload labor onto women and family structures. We must learn the same lesson here. Do not mother this problem away with charity alone. Menstrual health requires public systems, trained professionals, and legal entitlements that citizens can claim, not charity they must beg for. The court's judgment is a mandate. Our parliament must translate it into enforceable entitlements, guarantee products including reusable options, funded health services for menstrual disorders, inclusive sanitary infrastructure, mandatory curriculum, changes, and cross departmental accountability. So, the bill offers concrete language to strengthen the draft national menstrual hygiene policy, anchoring it in dignity, equity, and constitutional rights. And she stands ready to work across benches to make the judgment meaningful for every menstruator in India. Legal recognition without systemic delivery could perhaps translate solely into consolation. Let us make this ruling the first chapter of a longer story, one where menstruation is met with dignity, where pain is treated, where education is honest, and where the state honors its duty to protect the bodily autonomy of its citizens. That is the promise we must keep.